Good afternoon. I'm Anderson Cooper, live in Gaza City. We're going to be bringing you extensive coverage throughout this next hour from here in Gaza City, also from Jerusalem, and our correspondents who are all throughout the entire region. It is 3 o'clock on the east coast of the United States, 10 o'clock p.m. here in Gaza City. It has been a very active day. We have seen continued rocket fire from forces inside Gaza City, rockets throughout the day being fired toward Israel. A number of those rockets have been intercepted. We also have seen a number of Israeli strikes on targets here in Gaza City. Most notably, several hours ago, the media center, a building which is about 4 blocks behind me, though you can't see it now in the darkness, was hit by 3 Israeli missiles that slammed into the lower floor, one of the lower floors of the building from different directions. We actually witnessed the initial impacts, and I should point out right now we just heard another explosion off in the distance, not a very loud one. You probably didn't pick it up on the camera, but now that darkness has fallen, we anticipate this is generally when the number of explosions, the number of attacks seems to go up. At least that's the way it's been for the last 6 days since this conflict has escalated. The attack on what turned out to be the media center was actually the second attack we saw on that building on Sunday. There had been, the Israeli Defense Forces say they targeted a Hamas antenna on that building, taking that out. Today, they say the target was much different, an office of a member of Islamic Jihad, which the United States and Israel considers a terrorist organization, according to Israeli Defense Forces and sources here in Gaza City. One member of Islamic Jihad was killed in this strike. Another person who was in the building was also killed. So 2 people killed in that strike. One of them confirmed a member of Islamic Jihad. The response by first responders was very quick. We were on the scene very quickly as well. Our Ben Wiedemann was there, and we're going to talk to him in just a moment. But first, I want to go to our Christian Amanpour, who is standing by in Jerusalem, who's been covering this conflict for days now, who's been in Jerusalem for days now. Christian, what have you been seeing there? What have you been hearing?
Well, obviously, Anderson, everybody is hoping that a ground invasion can be avoided. So the real impetus right now and the effort is on this ceasefire talks. We understand from an Israeli government official that the meeting of 9, if you like, is happening right now. In other words, the sort of kitchen cabinet, the closest advisors and officials around Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu are meeting here in Jerusalem tonight to decide on their next moves. Al Jazeera television is reporting that the Prime Minister has agreed to a 24-hour delay of any further escalation, agreed to the Egyptians. Now, we are not getting that confirmed or denied by Israeli officials. However, important to note that the UN Secretary General is coming here tomorrow, and a delegation of Arab League foreign ministers is going to where you are in Gaza. So potentially this diplomacy might continue to play out over the next 24 hours. I'm told by an Israeli government official that they hope that the diplomatic track will prove successful. They obviously are continuing with the military preparations as well. They call it the trigger is cocked. They're ready to pull it if the diplomacy doesn't work. And this evening, in fact, one official said that perhaps they might even have to show the, quote, sword more clearly in order to energize the diplomacy. So you can see there's a lot of impetus happening. People want the diplomacy to work. We are just not sure whether it is, even though we hear from the Palestinian side that they are working very seriously and they are really wanting to have a ceasefire, and the Egyptians are doing that work. Anderson?
Christian, is it clear at all at this point, and it may not be, what the parameters of any kind of ceasefire would be?
Well, from the Israeli point of view, what we're being told by officials is 2 very clear points. What they want is to make sure that, A, there are no rocket fire that goes into Israel, and particularly, threatens that population in the southern Israeli region closest to Gaza. They want to make sure that there is no resupply of Hamas weaponry via the tunnel system or whatever that border is closer to the side with Egypt. So those are big deals. They want not just, quote, a quickie ceasefire, but they want a longer commitment to a ceasefire, to stop any kind of rocket fire. From the Palestinian Hamas side, what they want is a lifting of the siege. They want a commitment that Israel stops targeting their high officials. So those are the things that are being discussed right now, and we wait to see whether there's a possibility of common ground that both sides can declare some kind of a victory, if you like, and get off that exit ramp.
I'm told we have some sound from someone described as an unofficial Israeli negotiator. Let's listen.
And there are the real hard issues that have to be dealt with that I'm not sure the two sides are ready to make compromises on. And those involve an Egyptian commitment to close the tunnels into Gaza so that Hamas won't rearm itself, a commitment of Hamas to put the ceasefire on all the factions and to prevent terrorism attacks against Israel, and an Israeli commitment to open up the Gaza Strip to the rest of the world, ending the economic siege on Gaza.
And Christian continues to join me in Jerusalem. Christian, I should just point out we've just heard a few distant booms here in Gaza City. I can't really see any impact, so I'm not sure how far away they were or what kind of an impact that they may have had. It seems, though, Christian, while these talks would be in effect, the likelihood of any kind of ground operation would be diminished. Would that be a correct read?
Well, that's what everybody is sitting on tenterhooks waiting to see. The Israelis describe it as pursuing basically a dual track, that they're getting their military ducks in order. They've, as you know, called out more than 70,000 reservists, some 75,000, and they have tanks and other armor and materiel and troops waiting at the Gaza border. A lot of the roads have been closed off around there. It's a closed military zone around that area. What's interesting also, though, is that Israeli military officials have told me that they feel that they are having an impact in terms of reducing the amount of rocket fire coming out of Gaza. Even though there is this back and forth, as you obviously can see in Gaza, people in the southern part of Israel can see, it continues, but Israel believes that it's reducing the number of rockets that's coming over. And of course has intercepted quite a few of them with that Iron Dome. Palestinians, for their point, tell us that, look, any more of this kind of killing that leaves civilians dead is going to further inflame the situation amongst the Palestinians and make it more difficult to come to a quicker truce. So, these are issues that, while the talks may be going on, any number of things on the ground might derail them. So again, we're just waiting to see how these talks resolve. But what we do know is that the United States is involved. President Obama, we've been told, even as he's in Asia, has been calling both the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Egypt to be updated and to give the U.S. point of view on all of this. But it is Egypt who is taking the lead, and all the U.S. and other officials are talking to the Palestinians via the Egyptians.
Christian Almanpour, appreciate it. We'll continue to check in with you throughout the day and well into the night here on CNN. Our Ben Wiedemann was early on the scene of the strike that we witnessed earlier today, several hours earlier today on the media center. 3 rockets hitting a lower floor in that building, according to Israeli officials, killing 1 member of Islamic Jihad. Also, Palestinian sources on this side also verifying that. Ben filed this report. Take a look.
At about 3:20 in the afternoon, we heard 3 large explosions. We saw a great big ball of flame coming out of the 3rd floor. It appears to have been an Israeli airstrike. This is the Shuruk building. It contains the offices of Al-Aqsa Television, a television station affiliated with the Hamas movement. It also was hit the day before. Apparently, people in the building did get a phone call from the Israeli military telling them to leave. Now, we did see at least 1 man being taken out on a stretcher by the ambulance services. That man was severely burned. We've subsequently learned that he, in fact, was dead. They're still looking inside if there's anybody else who survived or was killed in the bombing, and, of course, trying to put out the fire.
That report was filed from Ben Wiedemann earlier, and Ben Wiedemann joins me right now. That strike killed one member of Islamic Jihad, according to Israel and also Palestinian sources here.
Yes, and one other person, apparently a Christian store owner, died of a heart attack as a result of that attack. But certainly it's not the first time. That building was hit another time. And
just on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
And in fact, they received a warning in the building that the building would be hit. What happened is the journalists who were in the building left, stayed out for several hours, felt they needed to get back to work, went back in, and that's when it was hit.
Do we know today how many people were in the building, or was it pretty empty?
It was pretty empty. I mean, there were obviously a couple people there, but it was not operating.
In terms of the, we can have throughout the day, we've continued to see rockets being fired into Israel. How sophisticated are the kind of rockets? Because over the years, I mean, you have been there seeing these rockets being fired up close, seeing them being assembled. They're more sophisticated now than they were the last time.
Yeah, dramatically so. I mean, 6 years ago, I went to a workshop where they were being made. They were crude, no guidance systems, very small warheads stuffed full of sort of jagged pieces of metal all rolled up in tape. Now we're seeing bigger missiles that come from outside. They don't have sophisticated guidance systems, but they have a range that is far greater than what we saw before. Obviously, a much higher lethality than they had before as well.
How are the missiles getting in? How are they getting smuggled
They're
in?
getting through the tunnels. Now, these Fajr 5 missiles are long missiles. They have to be disassembled and brought in one by one. Now, another significant change that we're seeing is that whereas before, the rocket teams, the missile teams would go out in olive groves on the outskirts of Gaza and also within the towns themselves and put it on a tripod. They had 3 minutes to set it up, light it, and run. Now, what they're doing is they're burying these automatic missile launchers that are, as far as we know, locally made in the sand. Somebody remotely presses a button, they go up and they fire. So there's no longer that immediate risk to the people involved in launching the missiles. And I think that's really one of the biggest changes as far as the missile systems that are being used.
Interesting. We'll continue to have more from Ben throughout the day and the evening. Ben, thanks very much. Our coverage continues from Gaza, also from the border towns in Israel that have also been hard hit by some of these rockets that we were just talking about. We're going to take a short break and our coverage continues in a moment.
And you can imagine if it's yours, baby, how do you feel?
أن هناك إصابات في هذا